I think people have been programmed into thinking that we're empty and that we need to be filled up, because there's this big fear that if we don't get everything that we need, we're not going to be successful later. And so we miss the energy of who we are from a being place because we're so focused on the doing. So the concept of, well, what if we could really examine who we really are from a deep place rather than who we were supposed to be by other people's standards? Well, every time I made a change, I was looking for an answer. And the common theme was, how do people determine who they are going to be and how they want to play in this world? And what does education have to do with it? Because I found that my education did not really prepare me for the life I wanted to live. And I wanted to see how other people are operating in terms of their choices, what they were deciding. And what I discovered, a lot of people did certain things, like they went to college because they didn't want to go into the army. You know what I mean? Everything was like, it wasn't like a moving forward energy, it was a moving away from energy. So that led me to wanting to be curious about, how do people unfold who they really are from the inside out? Well, AI is a major shift, and it's how we adapt to it, because the relationship skill sets are not going to be able to be replaced. And I make sure that whenever I talk to someone on customer care, like I'm trying to solve a problem and I'm talking to a real human being, I always want them to know how much I appreciate that I'm talking to a human being that can actually go back and forth with me to solve the problem, as opposed to a bot that's trying to, the drill. You guys have all been through it. So the idea is, how do we leverage this authentic intelligence in a way that supports our own unfolding genius? And I call it your soul's purpose.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of Living the Potential podcast, Bridging the Potential. Parker Cook along with Don White. We're both members of the Living the Potential team. And today we are very pleased to welcome our good friend, Renee, Beth Poindexter. Renee is the founder of Living the Potential Network, a former school teacher, entrepreneur, business coach, international speaker. She's faculty of Self-Design Graduate Institute and the Transformational Learning Network, an expert in relationship marketing and trainer, advisor to corporate boards, creator of the highly acclaimed Changemakers courses at LTPN, a dear and now lifelong friend. And it's a great pleasure to have her with us to talk about her newest edition of her book, and among many other things. Renee, Beth, welcome. How are you?
Awesome. I'm so happy to be here, a guest in the environment that I always envisioned be co-generated. So thank you for being the facilitators today. That was always my vision, getting in the back seat rather than front seat.
Fantastic, fantastic. Don and I would like to start off, I think, with maybe a bit more of a deep end rather than a shallow end for you, but I think it really sets the tone, and ask, really, I think, to what goes to the heart of what you've been doing your whole life, and asking what becomes possible, Renee, when we learn and lead and create across generations. And this is in the context of your particular interest in intergenerational learning. So maybe talk a little bit about that through and how that relates to your courses, the Changemakers, and what you're hoping to achieve through this latest launch of your book.
Oh, thank you. That's a loaded question. I think the key theme that's been dogging me for years is the concept of intergenerational learning. And people go, what's that? Well, have you ever been, let's say, maybe it's a holiday gathering and you're witnessing your grandchildren or your own children, or maybe you're a teacher and you're going, oh my gosh, did I just hear what you said? It's like that saying of out of the mouths of babes, it's like the most brilliant comes through. And I've witnessed that, even though I'm not a mother in this lifetime. I've witnessed and been in so many environments where young people have the wisdom that surprises people older than them because I think people have been programmed into thinking that we're empty and that we need to be filled up, because there's this big fear that if we don't get everything that we need, we're not going to be successful later. And so we miss the energy of who we are from a being place because we're so focused on the doing. So the concept of, well, what if we could really examine who we really are from a deep place rather than who we were supposed to be by other people's standards? And then you start to look at like, oh, well, my parents and my teachers, I mean, in my own experience, I talk about it in my book, it's like, gosh, I was the oldest of two and wanted to be the model child and, did everything the right way. And life still didn't work out the way it was supposed to. So I think at some point you start to realize, well, wait a second, who am I anyway, without other people telling me? And so by bringing intergenerational learning communities together, let's say people from the age of 15, I think it's the youngest we've had, age 15 all the way to 80, in small group conversations, talking about things that really matter, like climate issues and social injustice and food scarcity and issues that are facing our world today. Suddenly the elders are listening to the youth and going, oh my, that's a brilliant idea. I never would have thought it that way. And the youth are thinking, oh, wow, I can't believe that those elders have so much baggage that they have to let go of in order to be present in the moment. So once I started to see that synergy of it's not so much about age, in our world, we've been separated. I remember, we have the fifth graders and then the seventh graders and you have the ninth graders. And maybe even at family gatherings, I remember the kids would eat in the kitchen and the adults would be in the dining room. There was a big separation going on. And what I find is that when we bringing people together, there's a common interest around things that matter. And it's not so much about age, it's about energy. So the energy of people who are committed to, hey, I've got an idea, let's do this, and suddenly you get people excited through enthusiasm, which young people bring, right? It's pretty exciting. So by witnessing all that, Parker, and you've been there because of our work that we did with Brent Cameron, which I'm sure you're going to bring in a minute. When you tap into the awe and wonder of what young people bring, it's like right now I have two grandnieces. One is 8 and one is 5. And hanging out with them and going to the science museum and watching what they're curious about and what they gravitate towards is very, what should I say, energizing for me because it's almost like I'm recapturing the childhood that I missed in my own life, you know? And the enthusiasm and the awe and the wonder is so beautiful. So we wanted to capture that in terms of back with Brent Cameron and the work that I learned from him with his work with the young people is what does nature have to teach us? And nature is a living system, and we are too. And that there's a natural trust, and there's a cultivation, there's a cross-pollination that occurs, there's a regeneration that occurs, and there's a higher purpose to it all. At some point, we wake up to realizing, I'm here for a reason. And I don't know what that is, because no one can tell you what that is. But when you create an environment where people can co-generate together and be curious and allow the youth to speak and be heard and seen, it changes the whole game. So I don't know if I answered your question. I tried.
Absolutely. I think we're just getting started. That's a big topic. Dawn, I know you had kind of nodded in there, so go ahead.
Thank you, Parker. Renee, Beth, you have a really broad range of experiences, and I'm curious to hear how you connect the dots between your time as a teacher, your time with Brent Cameron and the young kids as they developed the learning community in a church of all places, and they ended up selling it to the hydro company, um, and then you've got experience as a community leader and developing a community of practice. Can you help us understand how all these dots connect that enable what we're doing today with living the potential?
Well, thank you, Don. That's a great question because I think everybody, when you look at your life, and it's like, is life happening to you, for you, or with you, right? And looking back on my life, I think I was a late bloomer. I didn't think I really started to question the system until around age 30. It was after I'd done everything right according to my parents, teachers, and so forth. I grew up in the Midwest. I put myself through college. I worked as a waitress, paying my way. I learned a lot about people because I've been naturally curious about them. And when my teaching career, I taught high school English for about 6 years, and I thought, actually, I really loved it. The kids were really, really cool. It's like, but I found out that the way in which I taught was not what other teachers condoned. You know what I mean? I would have the students in a circle and we would co-create the environment about you have to be here for this class. This is my job, but we get to spend this time together and I am here to learn with you. So I created a whole new dynamic in the learning space where I became very popular. And when I became very popular, the other teachers didn't like me because the kids liked me. You know what I mean? It's kind of an interesting dynamic. But I started to realize there was something off in the system, and I couldn't quite figure out what it was because I got burned out after about 6 years. I taught 6 classes, 4 preps. I was senior class advisor, a drill team advisor. I led some play. I was like, I loved it, but I was exhausted. And luckily for me, a neighbor of mine was a executive recruiter, and she said, "You know what? You should go into business." I go, "Well, you mean I have to go back to school and get an MBA? What do I need to do?" And she says, "Oh no, with your personality," she says, "I can put you in front of these corporations because Toledo, Ohio is the glass capital of the world. So Owens Corning, Owens, Illinois, Libby Owens Ford, these companies were needing to hire women because back in the day, it was affirmative action. So I got a role as a business development specialist in building products. And I went from, I tell people, I went from selling verbs and adverbs to selling roofing in Texas as a woman. And that was a big paradigm shift. But that's when I learned that, oh, if you listen and hear people, and even if they don't know how to take you, if you hold space and listen, you can help solve problems. Because quite honestly, they were not happy with a woman taking a man's job back in the day. And I remember being thrown out of lumber dealers and going, we're not going to deal with you. I mean, you tell your company that we've been wanting to buy insulation. We haven't been able to because of the oil crisis. And now they're using sex to come in and sell building products. I went, oh no, you've got this confused. I'm sorry. Let's talk about this. Let's work through this. So I learned negotiation in the moment. I learned how to work again with people who are not for me. And I learned a whole lot that I never would have learned, in an MBA program. And from there, Don, as you know, because you're a business development specialist yourself, is that once you learn to communicate, you can go into different industries. So from the building products industry, I went into real estate, I went into advertising and public relations. I've owned financial, I was a financial planner for a while. I worked in the software industry. And it sounds like, wow, Renee, do you have ADHD or what? Why did you do so many things? Well, every time I made a change, I was looking for an answer. And the common theme was, how do people determine who they are going to be and how they want to play in this world? And what does education have to do with it? Because I found that my education did not really prepare me for the life I wanted to live. And I wanted to see how other people are operating in terms of their choices and what they were deciding. And what I discovered, a lot of people, back in the day, I found that people did certain things like they went to college because they didn't want to go into the army. You know what I mean? Everything was like, it wasn't like a moving forward energy, it was a moving away from energy. So that led me to wanting to be curious about how do people unfold who they really are from the inside out. And it sounds like at one point I thought I wanted to be a minister because I thought maybe that's what I need to be doing is, but I realized I don't want to run a church, right? But I began to see a commonality with people. And what I found, that's where the cross-pollination comes in. It's like I had to learn to trust myself in dynamic situations. I needed to cultivate my learning in order to be seen as credible in these different environments. And then I needed to learn to cross-pollinate with people where I go, that's a great question. Someone else over here can partner with you, and let's create something bigger than any one of us can do together. So business became a vehicle for me to test out some theories that I could never do in education. And along the way, I started to see certain patterns, the patterns of how people operate. So all of that has come into, well, what if we could do education differently? My favorite quote that I got from the Shoemaker briefings that says, art leads science by 10 years, science leads business by 10 years, and business leads education by 10 years. So in a linear world, the artists are 30 years ahead. So I wrote, like, okay, well, if we cross-pollinate, which I've been doing all along, and we bring the youth into it, what kind of world can we create? So I think that's probably part of the answer that you were looking for. I don't know for sure.
Well, yeah, what I'm hearing, Renee, Beth, you learn to pick your head up and
Yeah.
look around you. And one piece, I've been a very involved dad, and you talked about how the kids really enjoyed your class. You made it fun. You made it fun to learn, and the kids love to have fun. And I think part of what you bring to living the potential is the ability to continue to make learning fun for kids of all ages. And when we're having a good time, and I see it in the discussions with our groups, people open up, they relax, they trust the other people in the Zoom room, and then the magic happens. And we share bits and pieces about whatever the topic of discussion is. And people enjoy that. And we hear comments a lot about, wow, this is really an open group, and I like this, and I can be myself here. So yeah, I see that show up in our coursework and in our Zooms.
Right.
I think it's really powerful.
Thank you. Well, one thing I'd like to add to what you said, Don, is some people are probably going, is this a school? What are you doing? The model was like learning communities. That's the vision I always saw, is like learning communities. And Parker, you know, because Wonder Tree was the example for me. So let's go back a little bit and let's review what Wonder Tree was for you. And I'll share what it was for me that kind of created the context of learning community versus schooling. It's a completely different model.
Well, that's a yeah, that's a favorite topic of both of ours, and one I think that's relevant to exactly the conversation we're having today. I met Brent Cameron in '94, and you met him. What year was it?
1987.
That sounds about right. Okay. And for anyone who hasn't heard of Brent Cameron, he has been likened to Canada's Rudolf Steiner or Maria Montessori, and founded a self-directed learning program from his daughter's entry into first grade, which then became with him all the way up through a high school and then beyond, and formed the second largest independent school in British Columbia, Canada, and then went on to co-found the Self-Designed Graduate Institute, among many other things. And uh, I had the fortune of volunteering back in the 90s with Brent when his daughter was 13 until she was 18, what they called virtual high. And then later was on the board for 6 years and then the executive team for the expanding independent program, both brick and mortar and online. And I think what was true, the thread that was true throughout that experience was that this was the kind of school that I longed for, wished I'd had as throughout my 12 years of education pre-university, and as well, noting that the students who were independent learners were especially drawn to this kind of program. Some were disgruntled, some were genius, some were ADHD or ADD, or whatever learning disability or title you want to put on it, including gifted or driven parents, maybe. Uh, each of those students exited Wonder Tree with a noticeable capacity that was actually recognized by faculty in universities. Many times we've heard this over and over. Are you a Wonder Tree? Are you a self-design student by any chance?
Hmm.
Out of, hundreds in lecture halls. So, uh, with from Brent's life and passing and his book, Self-Design: Nurturing Genius Through Natural Learning, Renee, Beth, your book then came out as I guess, a follow-up in a way, Living the Potential, Engaging of the Wisdom of Our Youth, um, which has now been re-released in an age of accelerated change. So,
Hmm.
um, I know you wanted to talk a little bit more about Brent, but maybe you could talk about that transition from meeting Brent and understanding what he had to offer and working with him, frankly, in
Right,
many different exceptional ways,
right.
and how that led towards you writing your latest piece.
Okay. Well, great. Well, I believe that life is an adventure. I think Helen Keller said that. Life is an adventure or it is nothing. So through my journey of living in Toledo, as a teacher, and then moving to Texas and working for Owens Corning, and then moving to Arizona and having an advertising company, and then, moving to California and being in the medical industry. I mean, and then to Oregon. I moved here in 95. Each step was like, I wonder. I mean, the reason why I became a financial planner was I saw what people did in terms of sacrificing their soul for money to live a life they don't love, to buy crap they don't need at some big department store to make up for the guilt that they feel that they don't spend with their kids. It's like everything seems to be like off around money being central, but not really the thing. So through my journey of all these professions and cities and states, I started to look at humanity as a whole and going, what's the issue? What's the issue? And when I was in healthcare, representing medical equipment in Southern California, primary product was cardiology, ventilators and oxygen systems and so forth. I saw the brokenness of the healthcare system. And it occurred to me, because I've been studying systems theory and so forth along the way, the system of the healthcare is similar to the system of education and what's broken about it. And what I came, a simple answer for me was they don't know who the customer is, right? Because in healthcare, there's in the US, insurance pays for this and the doctor does this, but it's not cross-pollinated for the benefit of the patient. And the same thing with students in school. We're spoon-fed small bits of information over a long period of time, really focusing on the cognitive enhancement. But as we know, humans are more than their brain. And I started to witness, like, oh my gosh. And along the way, I was traveling those freeways and I got really sick myself. And so I had a breakdown in my own body that said, stop sacrificing your body. It was chronic fatigue, or Epstein-Barr is what they called it. But luckily for me, I was led to an amazing homeopathic doctor who did energy medicine and so forth. And I went on a disability for 6 months. And this is an important part of the story because out of that recovery and healing, I started to see things differently. Like starting to look at what had I been learning and what's next. And along that way, I met Brent Cameron. And what I saw what he was doing was young people, teaching them to become project managers at the age of 5. Like, create your learning environment. What are you curious about? They would put it on a whiteboard and then they would say, okay, you're interested, your grandma has dementia and you're interested in brains and you're interested. So they create the projects and they learn to collaborate together. And I witnessed that. I went, oh yeah, this is what business needs, better people doing projects and collaborating. And it's like rather than being in silos of different topics like English here, math here, geography here, it's all integrated for problem solving as project managers. So these kids were able to do this at age 5. And when I met them, they were like 8 or 9 years old. And they were fascinated with the Macintosh computers when they first came out and the language of HyperCard. And so they would be designing their learning, creating programs that would take their curriculum and make it fun and interesting. And they got written up in the newspaper and so forth. And that's when BC Hydro learned about the kids. And they said, we want to create a game that teaches energy conservation. And it was called Power Smart. And it's going to be for seventh grade students. Instead of hiring these consultants and paying them $200,000, let's go to these kids because they know about programming and they are kids. And that's what we ultimately want to do. So I got to be part of all of that. And so what clicked for me was like, oh, my journey of what's broken in education, what's broken in healthcare, what's broken in business. It's like these systems and patterns. And if people knew how to bring more of what nature has to teach us into an aligned way of being, solving problems and bringing our own gifts and talent, because when the kids worked in groups to do things, there was the designers and there was the planners and there was the mathematicians, and they all went into their key area of expertise and genius and co-created something that was mind-blowing. That program was highly successful, and the utility company was so excited about it, they wanted to market it to other utilities. And at the same time, the young people, now they're like 12 and 13, they created their own company called Learningware Inc. And I created a company in California at the time called Metasource Network to actually take that game, turnkey game, and market it to other utilities. But I never told the people I was working with that my team are 13 and 14-year-olds, you see? So I had the experience of having it all come together when I witnessed Brent and I saw, like you said, Parker, gosh, what would my life have been like had I been in a learning environment like that? I had to discover it on my own journey and not really get it. So I was like 35 or 36 years old. And then when I got it, I went, more people need to know about this. So that became the seeds for Living the Potential. And the book, Living the Potential, Engaging the Wisdom of Our Youth to Save the World, came out in 2019. And I give examples of the youth that I met back when they were 13 and 14 and where their lives are today. And just to give people a snapshot that if we really want to create conscious learning communities, this new book coming out soon is called Living the Potential and Engaging the Wisdom of Our Youth in the Age of Accelerated Change. And it's kind of like become a handbook a little bit with extra, let's say you might be a grandma or you might be a business executive or you might be a stay-at-home mom or a teacher or a 15-year-old kid, and you read this book and you go, I've got gifts, I've got talent, this is what I care about. You mean I can participate in living the potential and maybe get matched up with other people who care about what I care about and I can bring my gifts and talent to it? Sign me up. That's the whole point because I think that's the big missing because we still have people in silos. And with the threat of AI, AI, oh my gosh. Well, we get to partner with AI in ways when we know who we are, what problems we want to solve, and as project managers working together with young people being a part of it because they are the leaders of the future, we're good to go. So I've been hanging on to that vision ever since I met Brent in I think it was 1986. And I know he's made his transition in 2012, I think it was. And I feel him here all the time. As a matter of fact, he's probably right here, right now, right? The energy of Brent, it lives on.
Powerful stuff. Renee, Beth, you talk a lot about the connection between our hearts and our heads. And we want
Mhm.
to be in a heart-led community that has win-win outcomes. And you facilitate discussions of all age groups to get different ideas. And then we work collaboratively to find positive outcomes. What can we make of this thing? Um, can you talk a little bit more about the power of trusting yourself? And that's the Trusting the Seeds course that people can become involved in. It's the foundational course. It's like the first step. When we really trust ourselves, magical things can happen. Can you expand a little bit more on the trust piece, the heart connection, and how you enable win-win outcomes in a community?
That's a beautiful question, Don. I think you could answer that as well because you're one of the facilitators of the program. And let me just say that because you have learned so much from your kids, you know what I mean? You are, both you and Parker are brilliant fathers and have realized that, you know what, age is like wisdom knows no age. So in trusting the seeds, the key elements of that is for people to do their inner work. And I found that it's my belief that, I don't know, there might be people listening to this who don't agree. I feel like I've witnessed so many people in different domains in my life that most people do not feel like they're enough. They're trying to prove something like they have value. And they're trying to prove it in some way to some other source that's shining on them that says you don't have what it takes. So, and generally that comes from some of the way in which we've been conditioned or programmed through our life to match the bell curve or, to get the grades or meet the team or, whether you feel like a winner or a loser, it's based on other people's labels being put on us, right? So trusting the seeds is about, wait, let's take a deep dive in you, each one of us. How are you wired? We have a cool tool that we use that it's not your personality, it's not your behavior, but it tells you how you're wired. And that ties to your core energies and your core values. And then we look at personality styles and we look at all kinds of opportunities of looking at your strengths. And so many people have been conditioned to work on their weaknesses rather than leveraging their strengths. So when we get in a conversation where people are going, hey, this is what I found out about me. What'd you find out? So there's a we conversation that comes like, oh my gosh, you have that talent. I could use that. How about we work together on this project or that? So suddenly, and it doesn't matter the age. It doesn't matter the age. It's the energy and like the desire, the will. And it ties in the mind, body, spirit, and heart, Don. Because so much of us, like in our conditioning through our life, it's been about, our mental capacity. And we know now that emotional intelligence is really important. And that leads to the heart center, so then that leads to conversations as we move through the courses, people start to trust themselves and then cultivate that in ways that unfolds for them the real truth and essence of who they are. So if you want to play in life with what I say, I think it was John Bradshaw that wrote the book, God Don't Make No Junk. And each one of us are uniquely wired and we're here for a purpose. And if you can discover that a little sooner and support your life in bringing that forward, you can create a livelihood where you don't have to sell your soul for money. You can be a part of a team of people who cares about the same thing you care about. And I think that's the age we're moving into now because of so many things changing in our world. Uh, Business, the economy, everything is shifting. So what are we going to do? Well, here's an idea. What if you can bring who you are to what you do and literally get paid to be yourself and being a part of the shift, be the change maker? And that's what we're doing, I think, with our courses.
Yeah.
There's a spiritual awakening that occurs, but I don't want people to think we're a church or this is religion. It's just, there's this, how would you describe it, Don? The spiritual awakening.
Well, I borrowed some tools from the courses for my boys, and I had my boys do the core value index and the strengths finder that you touched on briefly a moment ago. And my boys are in good fit jobs, they're thriving, they're happy. Will things change? Of course they'll change. But I remind my kids, go back to the core value index and read that report. It's like a 16-page report before your next review at work. If you're thinking about possibly trying to change some of your responsibilities that into some new aspect of what you want to do. And my guys have done that a number of times. Of course, I remind them, I do pull the dad card on them. And it's really helped. And I asked the guys after they read their reports, the Strengths Finder and the CVI, so did you agree with it? And they go, yeah, Dad, it fits.
Right. That's so cool, Don. Because I think Parker, you would agree. It's like when our youth can really know who they are sooner. Like I say, I didn't wake up till I was 30. And I feel like there's always more to learn. And it's like there's no there there. You know what I mean? It's just the world, and it's such a miraculous adventure that we're on. With each person, each course, each conversation, I'm learning something new about why am I here? What is my contribution? And I think when people go through the program, they learn to live more in the driver's seat of their life. They're driving the vehicle rather than being in the back seat or the trunk of the car. Right, Parker?
Absolutely. I mean, this is first of all, thank you, Don, for reminding me about. It was actually a lesson that Brent Cameron taught me that part of the one of the great benefits that's never often uh, presented beforehand from having children is that they become your greatest teachers, and it's our job as parents to wake up to that sooner than later, and the sooner we do, the better parents we become. um, and on that theme about the wisdom of youth, Renee, Beth, my goodness, there hasn't been probably a more existential threat to our own sort of sense of existence these days than what the new AI movement is quickly presenting us. And you've recently said that the future needs more than AI; it needs us. And I'm wondering, from that idea, um, what is it about? Yeah, maybe you could talk a little bit about where AI fits into this idea of the soul of technology, because I think it's misunderstood. It's actually a tricky title that has a blind spot to anybody who reads it. It feels to me that really there's a call there for what you started with where we started with at the beginning of this conversation around intergenerational learning.
Mhm.
Uh, and in your book now, living the potential, engaging the wisdom of our youth in an age of accelerated change, I think is as pertinent today as it ever could have been. So, wondering, how do we make sense of all of this? What would you like to see happen?
Well, yes, I think, there are in the program so far in Living the Potential, based on our collaboration so far, we have 12 facilitators and parents and grandparents and lots of people coming in. And a lot of people have taken Trusting the Seeds course. The facilitators went through the 5 courses, which includes the Soul of Technology, because it's trusting the seeds and cultivating fertile learning and cross-pollinating, regenerative systems. And the last one's the Soul of Technology. Because if we can use the higher purpose of technology with I call it authentic intelligence, not artificial, authentic. When you can actually, there's this concept of instead of the tail wagging the dog, if you are curious about what you want to learn and you partner with AI in a way that supports you in your journey of your learning, not to replace you, but to enhance and give you, I just feel like in so many ways it can shorten the learning curve to here's the areas that you might want to explore. It's kind of like gives us a map in some ways that support us in who we are becoming, not to replace our thinking, but to enhance our strategies in some ways.
Mhm.
And, it's not like I have it all figured out. All I know is I'm not afraid of it. And even though it's shifting the way business is being delivered, a lot of jobs are going away. I think it's going to be a call for entrepreneurship. I think people are going to be thinking about, okay, with the change, like any other major change in history, I love looking at history, like when the automobile came in and, airplanes came about and, just all of the shifts that happen in society when major shifts occurred. Well, AI is a major shift and it's how we adapt to it. I think it brings in that awareness that when we bring, it's not going to replace you, Parker, in terms of your work as a consultant or Don as your, work as a business development specialist, because the relationship skill sets are not going to be able to be replaced. And I make sure that whenever I talk to someone on customer care, like I'm trying to solve a problem and I'm talking to a real human being, I always want them to know how much I appreciate that I'm talking to a human being that can actually go back and forth with me to solve the problem, as opposed to a bot that's trying to, the drill. You guys have all been through it. So the idea is how do we leverage this authentic intelligence in a way that supports our own unfolding genius. And I call it your soul's purpose. Most people don't ever realize, or I should say, some people don't realize they have a soul. And again, this is not a cult. We're not talking about religion. I'm talking about your higher purpose. Why did God make you to be here now and this time in 2026? Why? And it's a good question to explore. It's not like you have to have the whole answer figured out. But once you do and you start to explore what's out there that will help me know more about it, I think these tools, including authentic intelligence, also known as artificial intelligence, can support us in becoming more of who we're meant to be so we can create the new world, the new earth that is going to show up any minute now. I'm an optimist. I keep thinking, in spite of circumstances, of the way it looks in the bigger view, something really significant is going to occur, and people are going to realize that they can be the change they wish to see. As Gandhi told us, you can be the change you wish to see. Bring who you are, the essence and your gifts and talent. Look at how you can play with others who care about what you care about. Let's create some entrepreneurial endeavors. That's what the kids did. Wonder Tree did it. I've been an entrepreneur most of my life, reinventing myself at different stages, and I've helped a lot of people do it. So why not create conscious, loving, lifelong learning communities where everybody has a voice?
The power of community. And then that leads into an event coming up in May. And Renee, Beth, if you talk a little bit about um, your new book is going to launch. If you talk a little bit about what we'll be discussing at the Podluck in May, and everyone, you may have heard some pieces during our discussion today. This is the power of community at work, right? Right within this podcast. And we listen to each other, we work together, and it can create very magical outcomes that maybe you haven't thought of yet because somebody else has another way of looking at something.
Right.
So if you could kind of wrap it all up, Renee, Beth, and talk about the upcoming Podluck, please.
Okay, well, some people don't know what a podluck is. You know what, Parker? How would you describe what is a podluck?
I like to think of it as a where a podcast meets a group gathering, a circle of people sharing ideas. That's probably the simplest form.
Uh,
And it goes back to the idea of a potluck where everybody brings something to share.
right.
Obviously, Renee, Beth, you were part of the I guess the coining of that phrase. But I think at its heart, though, what makes it different from most of the podcasts we've attended is that it's not a sage on the stage kind of idea, listening and
Mm.
maybe I'm doing the dishes or no, we're being asked to participate and share and contribute if we like.
Right. So, yeah, this is a podcast, and the podluck is a gathering, a community gathering. And we do it online. It's virtual. So we have people all over the country, like Don, you're in Virginia, and Parker, you're in Vancouver, Canada, and I'm in Portland, Oregon. But we meet on a regular basis, and I feel like, some of my podluck friends are know me better than some of my real family. It's kind of like, because we have deep, meaningful conversations. So normally we have the podluck on the first or second Saturday of the month, but this in May, we're doing it on May 23rd. And we're choosing May 23rd because it's part of a launch for the ebook that's coming out the following week. There'll be a special price that you can order the ebook online. We're participating in the Amazon bestseller program, and it'll be really interesting to have the conversation on the 23rd about this idea of authentic artificial intelligence and who we are becoming, and the importance of community and what do youth and different ages have to say about it. Because it's really important. People are like deer in the headlights, like, what are we going to do? Like, they're impacted by life happening to them. And in our community, we're going to go, well, wait a second. Let's remember who you are. What have you got? and what problems do you want to solve, and how do we align our energies together to be part of that solution. And it's amazing. It reminds me of the garden experiment, Don, that we did live in Washington, D.C. in 2019, where we started with a youth panel, and your son was part of that youth panel. And we talked about the issues and things on the mind of these young people that had just graduated from high school or in their first year of college. And we wrote out on flip charts around the room about all the issues they cared about. And then we listened and said, okay, what are the two issues that we want to workshop here to see what solutions we can come up with? And it was fascinating because there was a youth facilitator and an adult facilitator in different breakout rooms. And at the end of the day, people walked away with tears in their eyes. You were there. What was that experience? And we're trying to duplicate that virtually with the Podluck. How would you describe it?
The parents got it. The parents were listening to the youth, and you facilitated the youth to lead and to express what are your concerns. And they didn't feel a sense of enough community. They wanted more community in their lives. And of course, they're concerned about the environmental challenges that we all face. Those were the two big ones that came forward. And when the youth expressed those pieces and the parents really listened to their kids and to others' children, everybody got it. And you orchestrated all of it to engage the different perspectives, and the whole room participated to whatever degree they chose to.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it was very powerful. A lot of people were really moved. And
Right.
yeah, there were tears streaming.
Right. Thank you, Don. I'm so glad that you could be there, and your son was there, and it made a big difference for him and his life. And hopefully we can have him on a podcast soon. But that whole idea of a podluck and what a live event could be, there's seeds here that I think people are looking for community. So please mark May 23rd on your calendar. And we normally start around 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's normally about an hour and a half. And when you come, you're going to get a special gift as a part of showing up, because you're going to be part of the launch that we are doing for the new ebook, which is similar to the hard copy book, only better, updated, and more, as I've been told, it's more for the audience of 2026 rather than the audience of 2019. Little point by point, and here's what you can do, kind of like, you like this? Let's do this. Here's a place for you to show up. Because I think people are looking for direction and they're looking for community. So you don't really have to prepare anything to show up for this potluck. You just come as you are. Might bring your favorite drink and bring a friend, and bring your voice about what you're curious about, and see where it takes you. That's my recommendation and an invitation.
Thank you very much, Renee, Beth. And so, again, I heard you say Saturday, May 23rd, 4 in the afternoon Pacific, 7 Eastern, or you can go to livingthepotential.com and follow the links there to register.
Right.
Maybe any final closing thoughts for someone hoping to invite a friend, and what they might say?
I think it was Margaret Wheatley that said, no matter what problem we're facing, community is the answer. And we are a community that has been organically growing for at least 7 years. And the idea for it has been over 20 years, and we are looking forward for increasing our membership. And the power of it is when you come and bring who you are, you're going to receive a lot of, what should I say, it's the word I want to say, insights. You will discover insights about yourself that you didn't even know was possible. And that is a beautiful gift, because when you can see it for yourself, you're being the change you wish to see in the world, and you're rewarded and recognized for it in this community. So you get to show up and play big, whatever that dream on your heart is, bring it here, because the world's waiting for you. The world's needing it now. This is it. we're in a beautiful time on the planet, and it's something that we can create together. It's called co-generation in community. And I'd love to meet you and see what you're up to and see if there's a way we can play. Right, Don?
Play is good. We all want to play every day.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank both you guys for holding this space for me, because this is the future of the community. When you find your gift and talent, you get to play and create new things. So thank you both for holding the space. I really appreciate you both.
Thank you, Renee, Beth.